What would you do if your very first day at your dream job turned into a nightmare? Imagine walking into a place where every smile hides judgment, every whisper feels like a dagger, and every glance reminds you that you don't belong, at least that's what they think. Stay till the end, because the way this man responded will leave you speechless, and maybe even inspired. And hey, before we begin, if you believe in kindness, courage, and standing up for what's right, make sure to like this video and subscribe to Kindness Tales Live. Now, let's begin. The morning sun spilled golden light over Harrington University, a prestigious school with ivy-covered walls and marble pillars that screamed old money and older traditions. Among the crowd of students rushing to class, a tall man in a crisp charcoal suit stepped out of a modest black car. His name was Dr. Elijah Brooks, the new sociology professor, the university's first black faculty member in the department's 102-year history. He stood at the bottom of the wide stone staircase, clutching his briefcase and taking a deep breath. He'd worked years for this moment, PhD with honors, community work, published papers. This was supposed to be his dream come true, but as he climbed the steps, the weight of 100 unseen eyes pressed against him. Inside, the halls were buzzing. Whispers followed him like a shadow. Is that the new guy? Did you hear they hired him for diversity points? I bet he won't last a semester. Elijah tried to ignore it. He had faced worse: poverty, prejudice, pain. But he also carried something stronger than all of that: purpose. He reached his classroom, set down his briefcase, and began to prepare for his first lecture. Students trickled in, some curious, others skeptical. One group of boys at the back, led by Tyler Hayes, the entitled son of a powerful donor, exchanged smirks. Can you believe this? Tyler whispered loudly enough for others to hear. We get a professor who looks more like a basketball coach than an academic. A few students chuckled nervously. Elijah heard it, of course, but didn't react. Instead, he smiled warmly at the class and began. Good morning, everyone. I'm Dr. Brooks. Sociology, at its heart, is the study of us, our systems, our beliefs, our fears. And today, I want to talk about one thing that has shaped every society in history. He paused, eyes flicking toward Tyler. Power. That word hit the air like a spark. For the next hour, Elijah spoke with calm authority, weaving history and humanity together. He used stories, humor, and insight. Even the students who came in smirking found themselves sitting up, paying attention. But not Tyler. He kept scrolling on his phone, muttering jokes. When Elijah asked him a direct question, Tyler shrugged. I don't know, sir. Maybe you should teach something that matters. A few gasps rippled through the class. Elijah's expression didn't change. Sociology does matter, Mr. Hayes, he said gently. Understanding people is how we prevent the mistakes that divide us. But Tyler wasn't done. Maybe people just don't want to be understood by someone who doesn't belong here. The silence that followed was sharp enough to cut glass. Elijah looked at him, really looked, and then said calmly, Then I suppose it's a good thing I'm not here to belong. I'm here to teach. The bell rang. Students filed out awkwardly. Tyler and his friends lingered, whispering and snickering. One of them accidentally bumped Elijah's shoulder on the way out. His papers fluttered to the floor. Elijah knelt to pick them up slowly, his hands steady, though his heart was heavy. As he gathered the papers, he noticed one thing that made him pause. A flyer pinned to the notice board outside his classroom. Faculty dinner, invitation only. He'd never received one. That evening, as laughter echoed from the faculty lounge, Elijah sat alone in his office, grading papers that didn't need grading. Outside, rain began to fall, tapping against the window like quiet applause for a man no one yet appreciated. He closed his notebook and whispered to himself, You've been underestimated before, Elijah. Time to remind them who you are. What he did next would send shockwaves through the entire university. The next morning, the rain had cleared, but a storm was still brewing inside Harrington University. Dr. Elijah Brooks walked into the faculty lounge holding a tray of coffee cups, hoping to break the invisible wall between him and the others. Conversation stopped when he entered. A few polite nods, a forced smile or two, but mostly silence. The room smelled of roasted beans and judgment. Dr. Peterson, an older white professor, cleared his throat. You must be the new hire, he said, not offering his hand. I've heard quite a bit about your teaching style. Elijah smiled calmly. I hope what you've heard is that I care about my students. Peterson smirked. Yes, well, around here we stick to tradition. Elijah nodded, setting the coffee on the table. Tradition's important, but so is growth. His words floated in the air, heavy with meaning. Peterson turned away. The message was clear. He wasn't welcome. Later that day, as Elijah entered his class, he noticed something off. Scribbled across his whiteboard in bold red marker were the words, "Go back where you came from." The laughter from the back of the room told him who had done it. Tyler Hayes sat with his legs stretched, grinning like he owned the place. Elijah didn't erase the message immediately. He stood there reading it, then turned slowly to face the class. You know, he said softly, whoever wrote this probably thinks it's clever, but it's not. It's history, ugly, recycled, and tired. He paused, letting the silence do the rest. Let's talk about why people write things like this. What are they afraid of losing? He didn't yell, didn't scold. Instead, he turned hate into a lesson. By the end of class, every student was quiet, thinking, not about him, but about themselves. Even Tyler shifted in his seat, uncomfortable with the reflection in the mirror Elijah had just held up. After class, Elijah sat at his desk, staring at that hateful phrase still faintly visible on the board. He thought about his mother, who had worked 3 jobs to send him to college. He remembered her voice. Baby, don't fight small battles. Win the war by showing them who you are. That night he began to write. Not a complaint, not a resignation letter, but a proposal. He poured every ounce of his heart into it. The title at the top read, The Empathy Project, Building Bridges Between Students and Faculty Through Shared Stories. Over the next few weeks, Elijah quietly worked behind the scenes. He convinced a few students to help record short video interviews about their personal experiences with prejudice, belonging, and identity, no matter their race or background. He wanted people to see that pain wasn't exclusive and neither was understanding. The administration ignored his emails. His department chair brushed him off. Interesting idea, Dr. Brooks, she said with a fake smile. But we have a reputation to maintain. We don't need controversy. So Elijah decided to bypass them entirely. One Friday evening, while the campus was buzzing with football and parties, he rented the old auditorium using his own money. With the help of a few students, he hung string lights, set up a projector, and invited everyone. Faculty, students, even the janitors. He didn't send official invitations. He spread the word through whispers, text messages, and curiosity. By 7 p.m., people started to trickle in. At first, just a few. Then dozens. Then hundreds. The lights dimmed. The first video began to play. A young white student talking about being bullied for her accent. Then a Muslim girl describing the stares she got on campus. Then a black student confessing that he sometimes felt invisible. Each story peeled away another layer of ignorance, revealing something raw and human underneath. By the end, there wasn't a dry eye in the room. And then Elijah stepped onto the stage. He didn't have notes. He didn't need them. We can't change what we don't confront, he said, his voice firm but kind. And we can't confront what we refuse to see. I stand here not as a victim, but as a mirror. The reflection you see depends on the light you choose to shine. The room erupted into applause, loud, genuine, unstoppable. Even some of the professors stood, clapping slowly as if realizing for the first time what true leadership looked like. But not everyone was pleased. From the shadows at the back of the hall, Tyler watched with narrowed eyes. His pride burned hotter than his guilt, and in that moment, he made a decision, one that would put Elijah's job and reputation in serious danger. As Elijah stepped off stage, his heart felt light for the first time since arriving at Harrington. He had no idea that the next morning, a scandal would explode that would threaten to destroy everything he'd worked for. The sun had barely risen when the storm broke loose. Elijah's phone buzzed nonstop, emails, calls, and messages piling in like an avalanche. Confused, he grabbed his tablet, opened the university website, and froze. His heart dropped. The headline on the student newspaper read, Professor Brooks under investigation for misconduct, accused of misusing student funds. His name was plastered across social media, twisted with rumors. Screenshots, false receipts, fabricated messages. Someone had orchestrated a full-scale smear campaign overnight. He didn't need to guess who. Tyler Hayes' smirk was all over this mess, but Elijah didn't panic. He sat quietly at his desk, reading every accusation word by word. Most were anonymous claims that he had used student donations from the Empathy Project for personal gain. He hadn't even accepted donations. Everything had come from his own pocket. Still, in the digital age, truth moved slower than lies. By noon, the university had suspended him pending investigation. His access to his office and classes was revoked. Security escorted him out as students and staff whispered. A few of his students tried to defend him online, but the tide was too strong. Screenshots of doctored bank statements spread like wildfire. Every scroll on his phone tightened the knot in his chest. The faculty lounge that once turned its nose up at him now acted like they'd never met him. "We can't be associated with controversy," one colleague said, refusing to meet his eyes. That evening, Elijah sat alone on a park bench near campus, the same campus that had cheered for him just days earlier. His thoughts were heavy, his dreams crumbling. He thought of calling his mother but couldn't bear to hear disappointment in her voice. He looked up at the night sky, its silence more comforting than any word. "You told me to win the war, Mama," he whispered. "But what do I do when the battlefield is rigged?" Then his phone buzzed again, this time with a message from one of his students, Maya Lewis, a journalism major who had filmed the Empathy Project videos. "Professor Brooks," she wrote, "I think I found something you should see." Within minutes, Elijah was at her dorm. Maya showed him her laptop screen, a series of chat logs between Tyler Hayes and a tech student who had helped him forge the documents. "He bragged about framing you," she said, her voice shaking. "Said it would teach you your place. I recorded everything." Elijah leaned back, closing his eyes. Relief, sadness, anger, all tangled into one ache. "Maya, this could clear everything," he said softly. "But if we take this to the dean, Tyler's father will bury it. He donates half the scholarship fund." Maya nodded grimly. "Then we go public. We upload the truth." For a moment, Elijah hesitated. Going public meant risking his career permanently. Universities hate bad press, even when it's righteous. But then he remembered the faces in that auditorium, the tears, the applause, the hope. "Let's do it," he said finally, but not as revenge, as a lesson. That night, they worked in secret, piecing together a short video, chat screenshots, timestamps, Maya's testimony, and a quiet narration from Elijah himself. "This is not about destroying anyone," he said in the video. "It's about exposing what happens when hate goes unchecked." They uploaded it under the title, "The Truth Behind the Lies, Professor Brooks Speaks Out." Within hours, it exploded. Students shared it like wildfire. Alumni posted messages of support. Local news picked it up. By sunrise, the story had gone national. Hashtags like #Stand with Brooks and #Truth Over Hate trended across platforms. Suddenly, the university that tried to silence him was flooded with calls demanding justice. But not everyone celebrated. Inside the dean's office, chaos erupted. Donors threatened to pull funding. The administration scrambled to contain the fallout. And in the middle of it all, Tyler Hayes was called in for questioning. His confidence cracked like glass under pressure. When confronted with the evidence, he broke down and confessed. His plan, the forged receipts, everything. By the end of the day, the university publicly cleared Elijah of all wrongdoing and issued an apology. But Elijah didn't smile. He just stood there on the front steps of the building that once humiliated him, looking out at the crowd of students cheering his name. He felt vindicated, but also heartbroken that it had taken destruction for people to finally see him. That evening, as the sun set behind the campus clock tower, Elijah sat quietly in his car, staring at the university gates. His phone buzzed again, this time an email from the dean. "We'd like to invite you to speak at the annual academic conference next month. The topic, integrity and inclusion." Elijah smiled faintly. He knew this wasn't the end. It was the beginning of something much larger, something that would not just shock the university, but transform it forever. The grand auditorium of Harrington University had never been so full. Cameras lined the aisles, students packed the seats, and even local news crews were there. The banner across the stage read, "Annual Academic Conference in Integrity and Inclusion in Modern Education." At the center stood a single microphone and a nameplate, Dr. Elijah Brooks. The same man who just weeks ago had been walked off campus like a criminal was now being honored as a guest speaker. But Elijah didn't come for revenge. He came with a mission. As he waited backstage, he could hear the murmurs from the audience. Professors whispered apologies. Students talked about how his courage had inspired them. But in the front row, Elijah noticed two faces that made his heart tighten. The dean looking nervous and Tyler Hayes sitting beside his father, both stiff and silent. Elijah exhaled deeply. This was his moment, not to retaliate, but to reveal truth with grace. When his name was announced, the applause shook the walls. Elijah stepped onto the stage wearing a simple navy suit. No flash, no arrogance, just quiet strength. He stood at the podium, glanced at the crowd, and waited until the applause died down. Then he began. "Thank you," he said softly. "A few weeks ago, I stood outside this building being escorted off campus. I had been accused of things I didn't do, humiliated for something I didn't cause. But the truth has a way of finding light no matter how dark the room." The hall fell silent. Even the air seemed to pause. "When I first arrived here," Elijah continued, "I wanted to teach about power and empathy. But life decided I should show it instead. What happened to me wasn't just about race or prejudice. It was about how fear can twist perception, how silence can make us complicit, and how courage often comes at the cost of comfort." He looked directly at the dean, then at Tyler. "I forgive everyone involved, not because they deserve it, but because I refuse to let hate rent space in my soul." The crowd stirred. Some wiped their eyes. Others leaned forward, captivated. He went on. "This university taught me something unexpected. It showed me that change doesn't come from policies or apologies. It comes from people, from the students who refused to stay quiet, from those who stood up and said, 'This isn't right,' and from one brave young woman, Maya, who reminded me that truth is a responsibility, not a privilege." He motioned for Maya to stand, and the audience erupted in applause. She smiled shyly, tears in her eyes. Then Elijah's tone softened. "If there's one thing I've learned, it's that being different isn't a weakness. It's a test to see how much strength you can find in yourself when the world doubts you. I was tested. Many of you will be too. When that moment comes, remember, power isn't about control. It's about character." He paused, letting the words sink in. Then slowly he smiled. "Today I'm not here as a victim. I'm here as proof that kindness isn't weakness, forgiveness isn't surrender, and truth is the loudest voice of all." The room exploded with applause. People stood clapping and cheering, shouting his name. Even some of the professors who had once avoided him now stood in awe. The dean approached him after the speech, her face flushed. "Dr. Brooks," she said softly, "I owe you an apology. You've changed this campus." Elijah smiled politely. "Change doesn't come from one man, Dean. It comes when everyone decides to stop pretending." Then, to everyone's surprise, Tyler Hayes stepped forward. He looked terrified but determined. "Dr. Brooks," he said, voice shaking, "I'm sorry. I was wrong. I don't expect forgiveness, but thank you for not destroying me when you could have." Elijah placed a hand on his shoulder. "The fact that you're standing here saying that means you've already started changing." The crowd erupted again, not for Elijah this time, but for what that moment represented: growth, redemption, and grace. As the conference ended, Elijah stood alone on stage, the light soft against his face. He looked out at the sea of students and faculty now united by something bigger than pride or prejudice. And in that quiet moment, he realized he had done more than teach a lesson. He had rewritten the culture of an entire institution. Outside, reporters waited for interviews. Maya rushed up excited. "Professor Brooks, that was incredible." "You've gone viral again," Elijah laughed, shaking his head. "Let's hope this time it's for the right reasons." But deep inside, he wasn't thinking about fame or headlines. He was thinking about all the unseen battles people fight every day, and how maybe, just maybe, his story could help someone else keep standing when the world tried to knock them down. That night, Harrington University lit up its main building in gold, the color of unity. A few months had passed since the conference that changed everything. Harrington University no longer felt like the cold, divided place it once was. The Empathy Project that Elijah started had become an official university initiative, now taught across multiple departments. Students volunteered to share their stories every month, stories of pain, healing, and understanding. The walls that once echoed with whispers of hate now rang with applause for unity. And yet, for Elijah Brooks, the journey had only just begun. He sat in his small office one quiet afternoon, sunlight spilling across stacks of letters from students. Some were simple thank yous. Others were deeply personal confessions, stories of courage, growth, and forgiveness inspired by his. He picked up one from Tyler Hayes. The handwriting was shaky, but the words were sincere. "You didn't just change me, sir. You changed the way I see the world. I'm sorry for everything." Elijah smiled softly and placed the letter on his desk beside a framed photo of his late mother. "You'd be proud, Mama," he whispered. "We did it." But Elijah wasn't the kind of man to sit still for long. One evening, as he walked across campus, a group of students stopped him. "Professor Brooks," they called. "We're hosting a community event next week, open dialogue with local schools. We want you to lead it." Elijah paused, taken aback. The same university that once tried to silence him now wanted his voice to guide their next generation. "I'd be honored," he said, smiling. That night, as he prepared his notes, he reflected on how far things had come. He thought about his first day, the stares, the cruel laughter, the pain. And then he thought about the applause, the forgiveness, the unity that followed. It struck him how life had come full circle. The very people who had tried to tear him down had unknowingly built the stage for his rise. The event took place in the same old auditorium where it all began. This time, though, there was no tension, no hidden resentment. Parents, teachers, and students from nearby schools filled the room, eager to listen. The lights dimmed, and Elijah stepped up to the microphone once more. His voice was calm, steady, and filled with warmth. "When I first came here," he began, "I thought education was about books, exams, and lectures. But I've learned it's something much deeper. It's about empathy, learning not just what people know, but what they've lived through." He looked out at the audience, locking eyes with young students who reminded him of himself. "When you're treated unfairly, remember this. You don't have to become what hurt you. You can rise above it. That's real strength." A soft murmur of emotion filled the room. People nodded, some wiping tears. Elijah continued. "Every act of kindness, every small moment of understanding builds a bridge where hate tries to build walls. You might not see the change right away, but trust me, it begins the moment you choose compassion over pride." After his speech, a young black student approached him. She couldn't have been older than 17. "Professor Brooks," she said, voice trembling, "I saw what happened to you online last year. I almost quit my dream of becoming a teacher because I thought the world wouldn't accept someone like me. But your story, it gave me hope. I'm applying to Harrington next fall." Elijah's eyes softened. He placed a hand on her shoulder. "Then the world's already changing because you didn't give up." As he left the auditorium that night, the stars above seemed brighter than ever. He paused outside, taking in the cool air, the faint laughter of students behind him, and the peace that comes only from purpose fulfilled. His phone buzzed with a message from Maya. "They just announced it. You're getting the University Honor Award for Human Impact." Elijah chuckled. "Tell them to make the trophy small," he texted back. "I don't need much, just more hearts changed." He walked toward his car, the same one he drove on that first day, but everything felt different now. Not because the world had become perfect, but because he had chosen not to let imperfection define him. Final narrator hook. And maybe that's the real lesson here. No matter who you are, no matter where you start, your kindness has power. Power to silence hate, heal wounds, and rewrite stories. Dr. Elijah Brooks didn't just shock his university. He reminded us all that the strongest voice in any room is the one that speaks with grace. So if this story moved you, if you believe in courage, empathy, and standing tall when life tries to break you, then make sure to like this video and subscribe to Kindness Tales Live. Because sometimes, one story of kindness can change the world, starting with yours.